Welcome to the Resident Assistant Information session. We're going to be talking a lot about some information regarding what the Resident Assistant position is and the process for applying for the upcoming 2021-2022 school year. That's hard to say. My name is Erica Gleason. I am a hall director in Studebaker West, and there are a few other members of the selection committee here on this call, so I'll let them introduce themselves. Let's start with Bradford.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bradford Peace. I'm the hall director over in Studebaker East.
Hey, everybody. My name is Liz Thompson, and I am the hall director over in Woodworth.
Hi, I'm Donovan Cyrus. I'm one of the assistant resident hall directors over in Studebaker West.
Hi, I'm Izzy Kabir. I'm the assistant hall director at Kinghorn.
Hi, I am Cynthia Moberly, and I am the residence hall director over in Baker Clipple.
And then there's a few RAs here. If you want to introduce yourselves as well, that would be great. Cam, Quincy, and Noah.
Hey, I'm Noah. I'm a second-year RA at Kinghorn.
Hi, I'm Quincy. I'm a second-year RA in Studebaker West.
I'm also here. I'm Ryan, second year in Kinghorn, along with Noah.
I'm Cam. I'm a third year in Woodworth.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and jump through these slides. This will take probably 20 to 30 minutes, and then we'll have a few minutes at the end for some questions. Okay, so just to give you a little more specifics on what we're going to talk about this evening, we're going to talk about what the role of the RA is, what some of the requirements of the position are, expectations of the job, the things that are required of you in order to become an RA. We'll talk about the benefits and compensation of the position, and then we'll dive into what the process looks like in order to become an RA. So all of the things that you need to do, everything from the application to interviews to what it will look like to get an offer for the position. And we'll give you all the dates and details for all of those things. And then at the end, we'll have some time, like I said, for questions, and specifically a time for you to ask questions of Cam, Quincy, and Noah, who are current RAs. So just kind of an overview of what the role of a resident assistant is. Really, your main job as an RA is to create community. So as an RA, you're placed on a floor or a wing, and it's your job to build community there, to bring people together, and really create opportunities for residents to connect with you, to connect with each other, and to find that sense of belonging on their floor and at Ball State. So some of the things that come with that are serving as a resource for your residents, answering questions, pointing them to things like the Learning Center or the Counseling Center, different resources on campus, and also being a role model academically and just in life as well. Another piece that comes with building community and kind of keeping up that community as a resident assistant is maintaining safety. So anything that involves policy and hall safety, your job as an RA involves those things. And then just overall, like I said, leading and establishing that community within the residence hall.
Okay, so we're going to go over some of the job requirements of the RA position. So some day-to-day tasks. You will serve on a duty rotation, which includes weekends, weekdays, and some breaks and holidays. Those do differ, but like depending on what building you're in when you're offered the position. So that is like one of your daily tasks. Staff meetings, your whole staff will meet for 2 hours each week from 9:30 p.m. on 9:30 p.m. on Mondays. So make sure when you're filling out your application that you are available during those times. That is like a requirement of your position to be available 9:30 p.m. on Monday. You will also have one-on-ones, so you will meet with your residence hall director or assistant resident hall director on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. That differs between on which hall you're in. And going back to that maintaining safety component of it, this is about crisis management. So there will be aspects of the job where you will be reporting or responding to some instances that may deal with sexual assaults, mental health concerns, weather emergencies, missing persons. There's a long list that can go on. And if you have any questions about some other like crisis management things that you might have to encounter, those are a good question to be asked. Some other day-to-day tasks. So you will be working in your building, creating programs. You will also be looking at decorating a bulletin board for your hall, along with hall projects. And some of those differ, like I said, depending on which hall you're in and what supervisor you have. Intentional interactions are something that you will also be doing day to day. So that is when you are having conversations, checking in with your residents. You will actually be recording those and inputting those into our system so you can have those conversations. And then opening and closing for breaks, that is just part of that duty part of your job. So just make sure you're aware of, like, during opening, you will have to come in probably 2 to 3 weeks prior to opening so we can get the buildings open. And then we will also be closing on days before holiday breaks or the end of the semester or end of the year. And then there's also student staff orientation, which happens in August. And then there's also mid-year SSO in January. These are pretty much your training for the job. So you'll come in and we'll go through some of those. We'll have speakers that will come in and talk about certain aspects that you'll encounter while you're in the position. So those are very important that you have that in your schedule. Some other job expectations is like time management. So there will be points where you will facilitate community development, whether that is through like personal interactions, that's talking with your residents, talking with people within the building, having meetings or like creating activities such as like your community building program, the programs for your floor. Another time management component is while you're also doing some of those things, you will have to also balance your personal life, social life, and work life, which also incorporates school too. You know, that's what you're here for, is your education. So making sure that time management is one of those key features within the position is very crucial. Role modeling is the next one. So you want to make sure that you're a positive role model through personal examples and that you can demonstrate a commitment that Ball State Housing and Residence Life has through respectful language and behavior. So that is, you know, making sure that you're exemplifying what the department holds as some of their values through respectful language and behavior. Community building, so you will support and respect all individuals within the building with, you know, the respect that you would want to give them, you should also, or the respect that you would want to give yourself, you'd also want to give to them. And then help residents make connections through their floors, with the whole building, and throughout campus. You know, it's really important while you're in this position that you are helping build a community within your hall, and that will go further from your hall into other parts of the campus community. And then effective communication is really an important key feature. So you want to be able to make sure that you're able to have to confront people through policy violations or conflict, but also interact and connect with a wider variety of people within the building.
So these are the qualifications that we require for people to apply to the RA position. So you have to hold at least a 2.5 cumulative GPA. And then once you actually get into the role, if you are hired, we do have a GPA expectation that you would maintain that. We also require that you live on campus for 2 semesters before your position would start. And something that's new this year is that we actually only require you to live on campus at Ball State for 1 semester. So maybe you lived at on campus at another institution before you transferred to Ball State or something. That allows you to have the opportunity to apply if you do 1 semester in the residence hall at Ball State. And so requirement a little bit different this year. You have to also be in good academic and judicial standing with both housing as a department and the university. So that includes some different things related to conduct. If you've been involved in conduct situations in the residence hall, you can talk to your hall director if you have specific questions about like a situation you've been involved in. You also have to complete EDHI with a grade of B or better. So the class you would need to register for this spring, if you haven't already taken it, would be EDHI 200. And you do have to pass that with a B or better. And so when you're going through the process, you're currently enrolled for many of you in EDHI because it will overlap with the spring semester. And so then once you've been hired, we retroactively go back and check your grade to make sure that you're still good to go. You also have to have 27 completed credit hours, which is a little bit less than normal. I think typically it's 28, and we've lowered that slightly as well. And then you do have to be able to work the entire academic year. And so if you are thinking about studying abroad or something, you would want to plan that for a different year than when you want to be an RA. And so then related to compensation, you do get your own single room, and that looks a little bit different depending on the building, of course, but you also get a 21 meal plan. Air conditioning, if you're in a building that doesn't have AC, then you get that installed, which is really nice. You get a stipend of $1,300 a year on top of your free room and board. And then something that we think is really important, that's a piece of compensation in the position, is the transferable skills. And so if you think about maybe you're going into education, maybe you're a communications major, maybe you're, a biology major. When you're in the RA position, you'll learn a lot of different skills that are really transferable to any career. And so some of those are listed there: conflict management, communication, teamwork, leadership, time management, and written communication are all significant skills that we develop within you when you're in the role.
Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit more about the actual process of applying and being selected to become an RA. So the first thing that you want to make sure you do when you're signing up for classes for next semester, if you haven't already taken the EDHI 200 course, you'll want to sign up for that for the spring semester. It's a 1 credit hour course, and there's tons of different sections. It's going to be, I believe, online this coming semester. So hopefully there will be even more flexibility there. And that's taught by hall directors. So all of us hall directors are assigned to teach a different section of that class. Some of the topics include just different leadership skills, awareness of difference, lots of opportunities to learn about working on teams, talking about how to manage your time when you're in a leadership position and when you have more responsibilities as a student, and then kind of preparing you for the position with different scenarios and opportunities to think through planning events and programs, and also problem solving. Students who go through this course, I think, really enjoy it, and whether or not you get a position after going through that course, I think it's a great opportunity to reflect on yourself as a leader, and to develop some of those leadership skills, as well as just to make friends. I think there's a lot of like discussion and interactive pieces of that course, and it seems like a really great opportunity to get to know people in the class with you. It also counts towards the leadership minor, so if that's something you're doing, EDHI 200 would count towards that. And so you just have to take that class and get a B or higher in that class in order to be considered for the RA position. And then the application is going to open up on Monday, November 16th, and it will be open all the way through Friday, January 29th. And that will be through your housing portal. There will be information that goes out about how to access the application through emails from Ball State Housing, and it'll also be pretty easy to find like on the Ball State website and through your housing portal. The application is pretty straightforward, but we definitely recommend taking your time on that, checking, for grammar and spelling. And then you'll also have the option to list like an external reference. So that would be someone like a high school teacher or coach or any type of like mentor or leader in your life, former supervisor, who might be able to kind of give us insight into who you are as a leader and what you might be able to bring to the RA position. And that is optional. So if you don't have someone who you could list as a reference, that's totally okay. But that option is there if you think that would help you out in your application. And then before we offer first round interviews, we do just check that you meet the grade and judicial requirements.
So we recognize that some of you may have gone through interviews before, some of you haven't gone through interviews before, so we just kind of want to go a quick overview of like what the interview will look like. And like we said, there's a first round and a second round interview. So both interviews, the length will be about 30 minutes, depending on the conversations had within there. It should last about 30 minutes. So the next thing is the type of questions that might be asked within the interview. So there'll be short answer questions that will be based on things like leadership and experiences, or leadership experiences and skills, understanding the position. So you might, with the understanding the position, may have some conversations with your current RA, or if you know someone in the building who works as an RA, you may reach out to them just so you can get a better understanding of the position. Teamwork, and then awareness of differences. Those will be some of the questions that will come up within the interview. So the interview will be they'll be different depending on the round of the interview. So the first round interview will have 2 hall directors and 1 to 2 resident assistants. The second round will be 4 hall directors, but your second round may have one of the hall directors from your first round. So if that happens, it's totally okay. It's just the way that the interviews are set up. There will be note taking during your interview. So the hall directors will have a computer and will be taking notes. So if there's any awkward silence during your interview, that is just so that gives us time to like catch up, and because we want to capture everything you're saying within the interview. So just, be mindful of that. It's not us like making terrible notes or just like trying to write a full paper. We're just really trying to capture everything that's said with each question so we can best represent what you said to your answer. And then the interview process. So here are some tips for success. So like I said, educate yourself on the roles and the responsibilities within the position. If that is reaching out, like I said, to your hall director, to your RA, to a staff member within the building, like do that, because those people are going to be able to tell you more about the position because they actually do it daily. And they can give you good examples. Another thing too is to be yourself and be genuine and relaxed. Like when you come to this interview, we want to be able to get the best representation of you. We want to know who you are, you as a person, what your answers would be. So just make sure that when you're coming to interview that you're going to be the person who you are, because that's really what we want to see. And speak about your experiences. We all come from different places in life and different places in Indiana or outside of Indiana, and we all have different experiences. So make sure that you are speaking about your experiences. The best storyteller is yourself. So if you're able to do that, that'd be great. And then here are some example questions that you could ask in the to the interviewers. Just some examples. So what do you think are the most important qualities for someone to excel in this role? What do the day-to-day responsibilities look like? And then what are the next steps in the interview process? These are totally great questions to have. At the end of each interview, there will be a time where you can ask these kind of questions. So it's always a good tip to have some ready to ask when you come for your interview.
So a little bit more of a deep dive into what the process looks like. If you do go through the initial application process, and I think as Donovan mentioned, the initial screening of applications happens, and you are passed on to get a first round interview. We do that by sign up process. So the sign-ups open Tuesday, February 2nd at 8 a.m. and those are only open for a few days. So when you are approved to go through, you want to make sure that you get in there and select a time and date to sign up. And so then those close Friday, February 5th at 5. And then the weekend after that, on Saturday, February 13th, from 9 to 6, we have first round interviews all day. And so after that, the next Wednesday, we make cuts and we send those out. So you will know if you pass on to the second round of the process. So once you know whether or not you've passed on to the second round, if you do get to go interview a second time, those signups open Wednesday, February 17th at noon. And those are also, again, only open until Friday, February 9th at noon. So you want to go ahead and get in and sign up quickly. And then those interviews last a few days. So those are Tuesday, February 23rd through Friday, February 26th. So then once that second round of interviews is totally finished, the hall directors, the professional staff in housing make decisions about who's hired and then where you're placed. So you will, if you do get an offer, you find out whether or not you got a job and what building you're being offered a job in. And so then we take a little bit of time to get all of that set in stone, and then we send out offer letters through your Ball State emails on Friday, March 12th. And then you have to respond by Friday, March 19th to let us know if you do accept your position, or if you've been placed in the alternate pool, you have to accept by then as well. So the alternate pool, essentially, that means that you weren't given a spot in a building yet, but you are a viable candidate that someone might want to pick up because, of course, not every single person ends up accepting their position, or people decide that they don't actually want to be an RA, or people lose their positions for whatever reason. And so if you accept the alternate pool, then you could also get picked up at any point during the school year. So you could get picked up as early as right after these letters go out, all the way into the next spring semester. Sorry, I missed that last point. And then RA selection, of course, happens and is finished by that March 12th deadline, or March 19th. Sorry, I missed that. And then APM selection happens right after that. So if you are also considering applying to be an APM, the process for that kind of happens in tandem, but we finish selecting before APMs do. And then this is basically a simple guide that explains, if I know Donovan mentioned, maybe some of you have never done a formal interview before. That's totally fine. We don't expect you to, dress to the nines in your fanciest suit. We're also not going to be dressed that nice, but this is basically a guide to what business casual is. And that's pretty much how, if you've met your hall director, that's kind of how we dress most of the time. And so, we typically wear like either button-ups or nicer shirts, slacks or chino pants or things like that. And so we don't expect everyone to have amazing fancy business wear, but we do, want folks to understand this is a formal interview. And so really whatever you feel like is appropriate to bring to wear to an interview is probably going to be okay. Of course, there's things like sweatpants, pajamas. Those aren't things that you would wear to, an interview once you graduate and you're looking for a full-time job. So we want this to kind of be practice for you. And of course, you want to make sure that you come across as being serious about the job. So we would encourage you to dress more appropriately for an interview, whatever that means for you. And if you are worried about that, that's okay. Don't get too worked up about it. But if you feel like you are not at a place where you have business casual appropriate attire, I know that the student action team also has Cardinal Closet, so I'll plug that. And Donovan may speak more when he has another chance to present, but that is basically a place where you can get more interview appropriate clothes if needed. So ask Donovan or your hall director about Cardinal Closet if you feel like you need that. And lastly, this is sort of a brief overview of the whole timeline, kind of what we've been talking through. So the quick dates. So applications open November 16th at 8 a.m. So make sure you get your application in soon. That's coming up in a few weeks, which is crazy. And then you have that whole break time. And then a little bit into the spring semester, January 29th at noon. That is a hard close deadline. So you got to submit that by like 11:59. So make sure you get that in on time. And then the first round interviews, as I said, happen February 13th from 9 to 6. Second round, February 23rd through 26th. And then you'll be notified by March 12th.
Okay, and just a quick plug, if you are interested in the academic peer mentor position, which is also kind of runs on a similar timeline, there is an information session for that tomorrow night. And then there's also a second information session in November. So this QR code has that information. Similar process, it consists of the application on the same timeline. Interview also requires the EDHI 200 course. So that's also a leadership position within housing and residence life with more of like an academic focus, but also definitely focused on building connections with residents and planning events for residents. Okay, now we're gonna get to our question and answer section. Before we turn it over to our RA panel, we'll take any questions related specifically to the selection process. So if you have questions about the application, about interviews, about how offers are made, anything that's more of like the nitty-gritty details of the selection process, you can throw those in the chat now. If you're unable to ask a question through the chat, you can speak up. We just don't want to have like too many people speaking at once. So try to use the chat if you can, and we'll take those questions about the process. And once we finish those questions about the process, we will turn it over to questions more specific about like the experience of being an RA and the actual kind of tips and tricks from Quincy, Cam, and Noah.
Hey, Erica.
Yeah.
You want us to start answering some of them that are in the chat that are regarding selection?
Yeah, I'm gonna do my best to read the question too. That way everyone knows like what question is being answered. I'll try to read these, and if I want someone else to answer it, like a different hall director, I'll let you guys know if that works for you all. Okay, so I think the first question I'm seeing is how are we placed in the dorms? Like, is it based off of your major? Great question. As we are interviewing you in the first and second round interviews, some of the questions that we ask help us get a sense of whether or not you'll be a good fit for working with mostly freshmen or mostly upperclassmen, or kind of a mix of both. And really getting a sense of where you might fit in terms of like what different floors we have and what different communities we have. And also we take into consideration like what our different RA staffs need. So for example, if I'm hiring a staff for Studebaker West, I'm looking for RAs who are gonna kind of help balance out the rest of the team and bring something unique to the team. So we take a lot of things into consideration. So yeah, and you'll find that out when you get your offer. Next question is, are interviews over Zoom or in person? We haven't talked specific logistics about how the interviews will run this year, but they will most likely be over Zoom. How many RAs will be needed next year and how many usually get chosen? That's a great question. We have around, I want to say 140-ish RAs total on campus. I want to say based on this past year, we hired maybe like 60-ish ballpark new RAs. So we're usually filling at least half of our positions. So yeah, there's usually, I don't know, 60, 70 openings. It would be my rough estimate. If we aren't selected as an RA 1 year, can you apply again the next year? Cynthia, do you want to start taking some of these questions so I'm not the only one talking?
Yes, you can definitely reapply. I think a lot of people don't get a position not because they aren't a good candidate, but we just have a lot of good candidates sometimes. And so as long as you still meet all of the job requirements, you can keep applying until you get a position or you leave Ball State, of course. And then for the next one, if you are an RA, do you have to reapply the next year? No, we do sometimes have a little bit different of a process for folks who stay for maybe 3 years, but that doesn't mean they have to go through a whole reapplication process. So no, you do not. How many people usually apply for the RA position? Erica, do you know how many people applied last year total?
The last 2 years, we've had a little under 300 people apply.
And then if I take EDHI 200 in this upcoming spring semester, can I still be considered for the position for next year? Yes, that's probably when most people are taking it who are going to apply. I kind of alluded to this, but really you're applying while you're in EDHI, and so it feels kind of like, you know, I don't have my B yet to be, you know, qualified for the position. So if you're hired, we go back and check your grade later to make sure you did get a B, so you can stay in the position. I think Erica kind of hit the how many people are typically chosen. And I'm not sure what is the November application for sophomore year means. I'm not sure.
Hi, Cynthia.
I live.
I think for that one question, I'm assuming, so correct me if I'm wrong, but if you are a freshman, then the application that comes out in this November will be for your sophomore year. The November application is for the 2021 academic year. I can't do like math, not this academic year, but next academic year. So yes, it would be your sophomore year.
Erica, you want to take over again?
Yes. So I talked a little bit about placement already, but I can touch on that again. Basically, interviews happen, and then all the hall directors come together and we talk through the available candidates and where we think people might best fit in terms of whether they would be a good fit for working with mostly first-year students or working with mostly upperclassmen. Sometimes we take the LLC into consideration a little bit, and we also take into consideration like what you would bring to that specific staff team. So there's a lot of factors that go into that. Next question is, if you were selected for the alternate pool currently, and would you be considered for next semester? So I'm interpreting that as the upcoming spring semester. If you were in the alternate pool last spring, that lasts basically like the full academic year. So yes, you're still in the alternate pool, and if a position becomes available this academic year, you would still potentially be considered for that opening. And then once this academic year, or basically once the next round of offer letters go out in March, that's kind of when our alternate pool like resets basically. Next question is about having another job, working on breaks and holidays. That specific question, yes, like if you have a job at home and you only work on like winter break and summer, that's totally okay. You just can't work during like your RA contract times, which would be during like any time that we have classes and right before during training. Is there an option of having a roommate while being an RA? It's something you could potentially talk with your supervisor about once you are offered a position, but it's something that we like highly recommend not doing, just because it does require a lot of you to be a resident assistant, and it's just nice, honestly, to have your own space and to also have that option of if you need to talk to someone, your room is available for that, as like a private location to talk with residents if they need that. Cynthia, you want to take some again?
Yeah. Okay, are we allowed to request what dorm we would get to be an RA in? Not necessarily, but I think that I've been in interviews where people have done a good job of selling themselves in a certain like style of building. So say you are a freshman, but you feel like you're really mature and you think you'd love to work with upperclassmen, you might say that in your interview. So you're not going to be like, oh, like, you know, I just want to be in park, or I don't want to be an RA, because that comes off kind of rude, right? But you might say what I said about feeling like you're mature and can handle upperclassmen. That's just a good example of something that I've heard that was solid. But I think that on the application, you can kind of mention that somewhere if you want to. I'm not sure. Gavin asked about the dates for signups, so that might be incorrect on our slides. We'll have to go back and check that. But I believe it's February 17th and 19th. If it says 9th, that's probably incorrect. I think it's the Wednesday to the Friday. So we'll go back and check that. But if you become an RA 1 year, do you have a higher chance of being hired as an RA again? Yes. If you're hired as an RA for the coming year, you basically automatically get to come back as long as you have good evaluations with your supervisor for a second year. Is it 300 for 2 years or 300 each year? Do you mean 1,300, the stipend of $1,300? Sorry. Maybe that's what it is. Oh, 300 applicants. I'm tired. Yes, I think Erica said we have around 300 each year apply. Was that correct, Erica? Okay, yeah. And can you be in other clubs and activities? Yes, absolutely. You just have to make sure that you are managing your time well, and that's something that you have to talk to your supervisor and have approved. I have an RA who is involved in his fraternity. I have an RA who's involved in the Pokemon Club. Like I have very diverse RAs with like very diverse interests, and so they do a little bit of other things. But what you couldn't do is be involved in something that takes like every weeknight up or something like that. So just keep that in your mind when you're applying as well. And then the last question I see is, will we have to register for EDHI 200 when we register for other spring courses? Yes, that's something you should do. And it's only 1 credit hour. When it comes time to sign up for housing for returning students, do we have to do anything different? I would do what you would do if you were not hired as an RA and plan on signing up for that. If you signed a premium plan, does that affect where you're placed? No, that doesn't affect where you're placed. If you have a premium plan and you're going into your sophomore year, basically housing cancels out your premium plan and you get a standard RA plan for the year. And so you don't have to worry about any implications of like canceling a premium plan or anything. So no, it doesn't impact it. That's all the questions I see in the chat. Erica, do you want to turn it over to our RA panel?
Yeah, so I think Bradford, if you're still on here and want to kind of keep up with the chat with questions specifically for the RAs, maybe you can read those questions, Bradford, and then the 3 RAs, if you feel like you have an answer to that question that you want to share with the group, go for it.
Okay, sounds great. First question then for our RA panel, how time consuming is it to be an RA?
That one's kind of a hard one to answer because it really just depends on how involved you are outside of the job. I would say like it takes a lot of my time because I put a lot of energy into the job, probably more than necessary sometimes. But really like I said, you kind of put into it what you're going to get out of it. If you're trying to constantly get to know your residents, that's going to take a lot more time than an RA who doesn't constantly want to know their residents. So it is a time-consuming job. I won't say it's not, but it's very rewarding with the time you get out of it. I don't know if Noah and Cam have anything to add.
Quincy, you pretty much said everything that I was going to say. So if Noah has anything other than that, I think we can move on to the next question.
I don't have anything else. No, you said everything.
Next question is, what would you say is the most difficult part of being an RA?
For me, I'd say the most difficult part is really trying to figure out what I'm going to do each semester, as far as like programming and stuff like that. Like it's not as hard like if you come in with a plan, but sometimes you have to change it up for what your residents might like, because you want as many as you can to come to a program or come to an event that you're hosting. So having an idea in your head before you come, it might change. So if you guys come in already with a plan, just be prepared that your residents might not like anything that you're doing. And so you have to change it to fit their needs.
I would say that it's difficult to, like, some weeks are just really busy. This kind of goes with the last question, where some weeks I would call like my ROA weeks, and I'm very involved on campus. So those weeks, like I would have a lot of duty days because I would kind of force all my RA workload on one week. So those weeks can be really difficult because you're just up late a lot of nights doing duty stuff. But a lot of the time, it just depends on the week, how much RA stuff you have to do. Some weeks are very busy for me and others are not, and that's what is the difficulty.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say the most difficult part for me is when someone just really doesn't want to know me, and that makes it so much harder. And like kind of being rejected in a way, you kind of have to not take it to heart and have a tough skin, because there's just going to be some people who just don't want to know you. So that was definitely the hardest thing for me having to get used to.
Next question is almost the complete opposite. What do you enjoy most about being an RA?
It's fun.
Do you want to
I can speak on it. Oh, sorry.
or go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say my favorite thing is when my residents get involved in something that I don't think they would have if my involvement wasn't there. I had 2 residents in my first year that got involved with organizations on campus due to my recommendation. And now that they're still happy in those organizations, they've gotten really out there when they hadn't previously. That was a huge moment for me personally. I was just kind of taken aback that in my role, I could do that for somebody. And that's definitely my favorite part of the job. And also forming connections with my coworkers, especially.
I would say I enjoy the most getting to know people and like leaving kind of like my footprint on their lives. I see a lot of my residents from last year, even out and about, and they still get excited to see me. And it kind of just warms your heart when you get a message from one of them and, you know, they're telling you how they're doing, or they changed their major. Like they still talk to you after they're no longer living in your hallway. And I think just creating those relationships and those memories. And also I have a great staff, so I can brag about that a little bit and say that I've made some really great friends.
I'd say it's the same for me. The reason why I got into the job is because I wanted to like help freshmen and underclassmen really get connected onto campus the way that my RA did. So going kind of what Quincy said, making that impact on the residents, knowing that they're going to come back to you at some point and tell you how like their life is doing and update you. That's a warming feeling, knowing that you made that type of impact on someone that you didn't know before having this position.
Nice. What is the most surprising thing you encountered when adjusting to being an RA?
Not going to bed as early as I used to.
You don't realize how short some of the days can get when you just start like with a lot of like, I used to have my like one-on-one meeting with my hall director and my staff meeting in the same day. I'm like, oh man, I'm doing a lot of stuff that takes up my day. Like I go from class to RA stuff, and that can be tiring. That was very surprising to me that I'm like, oh, it's just this streamlined.
I'd say the most surprising thing for me, this is before like COVID and everything, but was like how much you actually have to like clean up after people. Honestly, like I did not expect it to be as the way it was. But other than that, I mean, pretty much everything is as expected, except for you don't get as much sleep, and your sleep schedule is definitely adjusted. Like I haven't gone to bed before midnight at all this semester, and it's not because I have schoolwork or anything. It's literally just either a resident comes knocking on the door, or you get really close with your staff, and then you're up talking to your staff all night, and you're like, oh, where'd the time go? But yeah, be prepared for that. If you're a night person, it'll be great. But if you are not, you got to adjust your hours.
And you have to sometimes do those last minute bulletin boards until 2 a.m.
One logistical question here. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna also say that yeah, people are very messy, and it gets understated how sloppy that college freshmen can be sometimes.
logistical question we go ahead and answer. I'll defer to Erica or Cynthia if you have a different answer. But if you apply for a university apartment instead of one of the halls and get hired, the contracts would work the same way, where your RA contract would supersede or replace the contract that you would have with the apartments. Okay. The next question, have you met anyone who has been beneficial to you in your experience as an RA?
I've met so many people through this job that I wouldn't have met otherwise. This really goes on my coworkers. Like my first year, I had great mentors that taught me a lot about the job and just myself as a person. I bettered a ton. And then this year when I got new staff, it was the same way. And some of the residents that you meet, like, also can change a lot of how you view yourself, and they can help improve you as you're improving them. It's really just the connections you form with people is what I love most about the job.
I would have to agree. Like my hall director from last year, Miss Erica Gleason, she has left a huge impact on me, and I cannot imagine what life would be like if I didn't know her. So your hall directors really become like your people, and they mean, I don't know, they just leave marks on you. Like now she's writing me a letter for law school, and I'm going to be very sad not to be here with her next year.
Yeah, I agree. Your coworkers and your the hall directors, they're very good people to get to know. They'll help you out. Like if you have questions about like grad school or anything, you can ask it because they've had to go through that. If you just have any questions about like life in general, a lot of them have gone through majority of what you've gone through. So getting to know them that way. Your residents, just you can find people from all walks of life through your residents, and you can find someone that you have something in common with, or someone that you have no idea where they came from or anything about them, and then you find something that just makes you guys connect, or something that you find interesting that you might want to pick up that they're doing. So just keep an open mind going into it. Don't go in thinking you're not going to like anybody or you're going to like everybody, because that's not true. But also ask if you need help, or ask if you want to know something. Be curious. Don't just like think you know everything.
Kind of a little funny story on that, actually. So I'm only a second year, and when I came into it, Miss Cam, who was just talking, wasn't too sure she was going to like me. We were on the same staff, and now we're best friends and are inseparable, even though we live in different buildings. So you really don't know who you're going to meet, and you don't know what kind of relationships you're going to build. And it really does leave memories.
How has this year been different than previous years?
I don't really like this question. This one's a hard one to answer just because it really has been different. You know, like the job itself is generally the same, but it's been a lot harder to build relationships and a lot harder to kind of plan events. I will say, you know, being a second year and only having one other year of experience, it's definitely been very different. I'm hoping that you guys by fall next year won't have this same stipulation, but we don't know what COVID's going to do. So you just have to, I think, be a lot more open-minded this coming year, because a lot of things are different and you have to do them in a different manner. But that's just me adjusting from last year. So maybe you coming in as a new person, it won't seem weird to you.
For me,
I would say that.
Go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna. Yeah, I mean, it is different, but a lot of our first years in Kinghorn have excelled even in this weird time when everybody's masked and we can't have a lot of in-person programming. Even like if the situation is different when you all are hired, I have faith that like things will go well. The new hires that we've had have been exceptional during this time, and I've been glad to see them thrive. So I wouldn't be too concerned about how different it is.
For me, being a third year, I've had 2 other years that are being completely different from this year. So it's kind of hard not to compare the last 2 years to this year. It's been different for me both. I'm in a different building, and with COVID being a new thing that we have to incorporate and everything, it's a different change. I wouldn't say it's difficult connection wise. Yes, it is difficult because you have residents who don't want to talk to you or don't want to get like real close to you because of COVID and everything. And us with the job, you can't really get as close as you want sometimes, like having residents hang out in your room or anything like that. So that makes it a little bit more difficult. But I think, like Noah was saying, a lot of people, it makes it, if you guys come into this and not having any experience under your belt, it helps you adjust a lot quicker. And also don't be afraid to like ask the second, third years who have been through this, both non-COVID and COVID related, for help, because they've now experienced it both types of ways, that then they can help you that way.
And I also think it's important to remember it's okay to not do great right in the beginning. You know, you're going to learn as you go on, and it's important to know that you aren't alone, because I'm a second year and I am straight struggling this month. So don't ever feel like you are the only one struggling, because probably 90% of the other people on your staff are as well.
Question about if you're unable to maintain the responsibilities of being an RA, you can resign. That does happen sometimes. That would be something you would talk with your supervisor about. And then a clarification on the university apartments contract, you would go ahead and do the application ahead of time as if that was where you were going to live, but go through the RA process at the same time. And as we said before, if you were to get the RA position, that would replace your apartments contract. Maybe a good closing question here is any advice for a candidate or a new RA?
Don't let it intimidate you. If you want to do this job and you're meant to do this job, then go for it, because it is a very rewarding job. It will leave long-lasting memories. And I, to this day, am so thankful that I was pushed to do this job, because I didn't think I was meant to do this. And I'm so grateful for the experience that I've had. And I'm very sad to be graduating in May.
Say, just be brave, get in there, be yourself, and like have a good story to tell when they ask you why you want to be an RA. I think the personality of the person that applies really shines through, and that's what hall directors are interested in. And I think if that shines through, you're meant to be in the position.
Yeah, I'd say definitely be yourself. Don't put on a front during your interviews. Don't pretend to be someone else, because once you get into the position and you start getting comfortable, your true colors are going to show, and you don't want anybody to be thinking like, oh, this is not the person that I wanted. So definitely be yourself. If you ask questions, don't be afraid to ask questions to anybody. Yeah, and if you go, like they've been saying, go for the job. Even if you get it and you love it, and you know something happens and you just don't like love it anymore, at least you can say that you went out for it. And if you don't make it, try again next year. Like keep going until you can't go anymore, essentially, because you never know. You could be hired as a junior or even a senior, and 1 year looks great on a resume. Like anybody, you have more experience going that way, and keep on pushing and pushing and showing that you made the effort to do it. And that's going to really make hall directors like look at you like, oh, you're going to continue to push and push until you get a position.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to go out of your comfort zone. You may not live in the same building. I didn't, and I'm so thankful. I was so scared to live in a new building, but it went well. And participate in your halls and your EDHI classes, because your RAs and your EDHI hall directors will be talking about you in your interviews. So do leave an impression on more than just your interviewers.
Also get to know your RA as well. We're nice. I hope all of us are nice. Like come and talk to us, have a conversation with us. With like COVID and everything, the majority of the time we're cooped up in our rooms anyway, so it'd be nice to have some human interaction. Or if you want to do like a Zoom call or something, like message us, let us know that you want to talk to us or something like that. You see us in the hall, say hi. Don't just like look away or anything like that. We're not the police. We're not gonna sit here and criticize you for anything. Like we're humans and students just as much as you are. So
we were freshmen once too.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we kind of we did this job so we could meet people and help you all out. So yeah, please don't be a stranger, whether you're my resident or their resident or some other RA's residents. I guarantee we want to talk to you. I think I can speak for all of student staff on that one.
Mhm.
Okay, I think we can go ahead and call it here. Thank you to our RA panel for all those answers. That was great. And thank you all who attended. I dropped my email address and Cynthia's email address in the chat. So if you have more questions specifically about the selection process, you're always welcome to email either one of us. And then just general questions about the position or about the process. Your hall directors and your RAs are also great resources for those. There's a website, a web page on the Ball State Housing website that has tons of information about the position and about the timeline for the process. So a lot of things can be found on the Ball State website as well. So I think we're good to go. Thank you, everyone, and have a good evening.